Damn, son. This is a King Major exclusive. Meme rap legends, trapaholics. Damn, it's based. Take it away, King Major. Fuck with your boy. Brrr. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you are at. What's up, people? It's King Major here. Look, so this is the third installment of my experiencer phenomena. I want to preface that, this is, this series, and related thumbnail material is my personal anecdotes. These are my personal testimonies. A lot of it I can't prove, or I should say, I don't currently have proof that I have. I could say I have before, and I'll get into that. Evidences of abduction phenomena, my occult practices, the nature of just bizarre phenomena of possession around me, and just overall. And I want to get more into personal stories before I talk about summoning UFOs. But, basically, a thing I didn't have in the original too was, and I recalled it as I was thinking. Wait, before that, I want to mention this, and I mentioned this on my Twitter today. I created this series starting last night, just wanting to rant about it as a form of catharsis. And I experienced my experiencer testimony, and then I wake up, right? And then my right arm is actually coming out of my shirt's head, the neck area, while I'm wearing the shirt. So for somehow, some way, I wake up and my right arm is going through the same socket of my shirt as my head. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is yet another time, as I explained, where just I wake up and my clothes will be on in a different way. And that's common phenomena within the abduction scenarios of the non-human intelligence, unidentified aerial and anomalous phenomena. It's common trope of more serious research into it that's been done. Basically, I wake up like that, and there's no way I'm doing that. Excuse me, do you have any times you're like, I'm going to sleep, and you wake up with your arm coming out of the same hole as your neck? I mean, as your head? That doesn't happen. When does that happen? It's like the time I mentioned, and I had this tobacco bag when I didn't have a cigarette pack at one time, and I didn't even really smoke it because I like menthol. And the crushing menthol in particular is the ones I like. The fresh, crushed menthols like Camel and, NXT Marble. And I take that spiritually. It's not like an addiction thing. It's the same thing with cannabis. It's all psychonauts shit. People don't really understand that about the spirituality of tobacco, but I digress. I wake up like that. It's just, you can't write this shit. It's more of the in my face, consequences of the occult. I wake up with that, and it's like the tobacco thing, as I was speaking about. I had this tobacco bag, and this was like 2 years ago, in my car. And then out of nowhere, one day I wake up with it on my bed. Shit like that, where they're like leaving little messages that I'm being abducted or something, or they're at least making their presence known. I mean, have you seen the stories of the guy that basically, he had a DNA sample of the blonde, whitish hair from his phenomena testimony was that he was getting raped by this woman with like jelly, and she was a blonde Nordic, and then she had like some sort of Japanese woman with him, indicating that, like I've been saying, that this connection to the Nordics is really a Nazi Romanite Reich-based, martial imperial design of warrior class that I've been explaining that go into the Elohim Empire or the Jade bureaucracy and religious tinges of the Orient. It's clearly in all of our religious texts in the ancient religions and stories like the cuneiform tablets of the Sumerians and the Akkadians. This is clearly the phenomena of our ancient deities and how the ancients saw them. They did not see them as allegory for life. They clearly saw them as external beings. I went through this in Elohim, the non-human intelligence among us, and the plurality of it, and of course the history of the Anunnaki text going into examples of Inanna, Marduk, Dumuzi, and etc., the Temple of Artemis. I mean, these people clearly, even, and this isn't something I've mentioned, the medieval times, they saw God and Jesus as external figures, alien-like in its design, always watching. They really did see it like that. You don't understand. And when you compare, like, you know, the accounts of saucers in the form of, like, flying chariots and accounts of flying shields, Romanite shields in the sky, the airship phenomena. Richard Dolan talks about this in his books. I love Richard Dolan. He doesn't agree with me on ancient astronaut theory, but I think there's a stronger case than people want to be honest about. I think it has to do with how they terminology and frame the non-human intelligence as a whole. I digress, but you know, basically, I have the mere fact that I even have this understanding at all is uncommon. And the way that I even approach life, like the Zionist question, I don't blame the Jews. I don't blame Zionists. I blame actual part players like Chabad Lubavitch. I specify Likud Party. I bring up Vladimir Jabotinsky and his influence with these Zionist revisionists. You know, I don't just say people. And the same thing would apply to Islamicists. Just because I'm critical of Jewish interests does not mean I support the Islamic endeavors of Iran either. They're both barbaric Levant region nightmares that serve the same non-human intelligence that is told in the universal ancient accounts. But the mere fact that I have so much of a in-depth fetishization in the more spiritual, literalist, original meaning of the word fetish, not sexual. I think that sexual fetishes even stem from this as well, and emotional things, and I can go into that another time. The point I'm bringing this up for is there's a reoccurrence of external phenomena. The unique circumstances of my life just seem to be that it's just normal for me. And I just wanted to make that the preface of this video, because I do understand, compared to most of my videos where I have unusual, anomalous, yet true, like, information to provide to people that is despite the common narrative, it's still, this series is my antidote. And I try to make it as most reasonable and information-based as I possibly can, so that I don't just seem whacked out despite the more crazy aspects of my journey. You know, for context on mental health, I've had diagnosis of Asperger's. The system tried to slander my experiences as schizophrenia when I went into the prison complex. Essentially, they said, you don't have experience or abduction occult phenomena. You are just schizophrenic. And there was a nightmare of the psychological operation of a decade with the United States government over my parody Twitter, who makes these I basically am the inversion of my King Majora persona now. The Stomestein character was more absurd, ironic, MLG, cringe humor intentionally, with my character of the Stomestein character, who was an edgy, insecure jackass who talked about conspiracy light, but it was still the SoundCloud comedy. The people in my jury laughed at the clips because they're supposed to be funny. You know, they took away the credible threats, because if you look up my name, Ronald Skelton II, on Google, you're going to get nothing but the complete slander in the media that I got screwed. I got made an example of because they really knew what I was doing. The shock humor and the tweets were to make the outrage about it to be, you know, a statement when I got to my greater arguments that I were formulating at the time. They knew what I was doing. It wasn't really like I had these problems with Obama and this and that and police. You know, Shag Stidham, I've mentioned him previously. He was the Secretary of Treasury for London, Ohio, and he was a deputy sheriff, dude. It was all a rhetoric. It was for my character to explain, like, you know, the Stomestein character was a caricature villain. He was evil on purpose, and he was there to say, you know, bitch suck my dick because I thought she would. Bitch suck my dick, now I'm gay. And he never rhymed in his songs intentionally, because I was making fun of vapid culture, where you don't even pay attention to what's really being chanted to you, what you're really hearing being hypnotized and repeated in your brain with these modern trendy pop songs. you just listen to the hypnotic beats. And he was intentionally crude. It was very nasty humor. I like edgy racial humor. I don't really hate anybody. My best friend was black for years. I have friends that are into the hip-hop scene in the more urbanite settings that are black. It's not just the token black, okay? I do make friends with a lot of people. I was a chameleon in high school. It's just when I had this, back to tying it to the paranormal, I had the third eye awakening because I smoked an intense amount of cannabis and began to have my already accelerant brain. Now you gotta understand, I'm an INTPT, a logician, on top of, well, originally at that time I was an INFPT, and I can explain my transformation into the logician through my ritualistic practice. Excuse me. But basically, I smoked so much weed, and the sativa variations were activating my third eye. And, there's research right now that's basically verifying the nature of the third eye, just not necessarily the more spiritual doctrines of it. They just say that these biological cutting-edge theories and sciences are basically saying, like, look, we do have some form of light sensory and third eye, reality in that region of the brain. But anyway, basically I'm awakening, and all of the injustices of life, I externalized them to where I figured it logically belonged. Reasonably, my whole character's purpose was the United States citizen. It's up to them. They're the reason everything's happening. Don't blame the globalists. Don't blame anyone but yourself. Look in the mirror. We are supposed to guard the United States and its freedoms. I mean, that's really why I hit dude. And Homeland Security came over my parody Twitter because my dad's wife wanted to get rid of me. She's psychotic. I don't want to get personal. We covered our beefs. We're different types of people. But my friends would even say this shit. I don't want to make this a therapy session, but long story short, I basically stood up for myself. I got into the rhetoric of, well, you're the motherfuckers who killed the black girl with the BB gun. But the whole situation is, I just got White Willow, my friends. I was smoking White Willow weed for the first time in my cannabis adventures and psychonaut shamanistic experiences. That some of the founding fathers, as I've said, and intellectual minds over the years have smoked cannabis for this reason alone. And like I do. And I do that for tobacco as well. But the flesh of God and Andrea Puharich and the CIA going after psychedelics and the mind control and MK Ultra that was recently in the congressional hearings, studying these very concepts with cannabis, and all of the paranormal events I've explained in the my case part so far, combined with the rhetoric from my, I will admit, very raunchy and very edgy MLG 2014 humor, but it was to make that point specifically with the other vapid culture things that I make fun of as a comedian, and a mind that's strategic thinking in the Gallup, Clifton Strengths test, if you know what that is, and they say that's the better equivalent of the Myers-Briggs personality test, more accurate. Going into multiple panels, it's a 5-panel, and all of them are in strategic thinking. So naturally, when I go into this with a trolly, Machiavellian, villainous, Saiyan, neurodivergent mindset, I'm going to get bamboozled because I'm not actually a criminal. I'm just a very provocative and not afraid to be patriotic in the sense that I love the freedoms that I had, and I made a thought experiment. I've said it's parody on multiple. Like, they took that away from the greater charge against me, but they still tried to slander me and say that's why I hit dude, which is fair point. I went to prison for it. I lost the insanity plea because basically the judge was like, look, you should change your plea because of what your people tried to say about mental illness. And I basically, the doctor's dead and I'm off the case now. I can admit this. He said, you're looking at a lot of time, 20 years. I'll say that you're schizophrenic, bro. Because this is why I bring up my case to begin with and preface this with the mental illness and autisms and things like that. After all was said and done towards the end, this was just rather recently, like last year, My psychiatrist was basically like, look, I've reevaluated you based on what you're telling me. You have no schizophrenia. You have no delusions. I've monitored you. I've studied you based on you when you did the in-house program for the federal government. You don't have that. You have a basic affect and a personality cluster B where it's like you're depressed, but really, and you don't relate, nor do you try to participate and engage with people. But that was more so due to my isolation from my spiritual journey. I'm finding a monolith of people who call what I do not real, simply because they don't have evidence of it or don't experience it nor want to. But people still have their fascinations with the occult. I mean, going into one of my more, the UFO stuff. The UFO stuff was like, another instance is where I'm having a dream, right? And I'm with my dad, a co-worker, because I work for my dad, and we're out in and it's at nighttime in front of my house looking up at the sky. And I don't know, it's like it's from a third person perspective in a way. And like, excuse me, I got hiccups. And it's like, what's going on? And the next thing you know, I see this alien in this weird mothership, and it's bright gold. And he's got like, it's weird to describe. He's like a pink, like humanoid Cal-Mundi from Star Wars with like a swirly cone head, ice cream top head. And that might be I don't know what it represented. The next thing you know, I'm feeling the effects of mind control, that I'm being controlled and stupefied, and I'm driving little go-karts in this weird ballroom with a bunch of other abducted people, including my father. And the guy who worked with us, for no reason, the guy who worked for us was involved with this whole story. Like, why were you even there? So I think that we got abducted. I'm mentioning other times that I've had abduction phenomena. And going in further to the ideas of seeing craft, I mentioned in the other videos the Millennium Falcon styled UFO that my buddy was with me, the Black Keo. He's been historically with me throughout the times. We're distant. I've explained the possession phenomenon. He was with me during channeling sessions early on, before I got arrested in 2015. Basically, he saw the Millennium Falcon. He told me this, and I'm like, look up there. I'm the one who told him to look, and all I saw, because we were outside on the patio smoking some weed. He's the dude I did DMT with my shamanistic dope seller buddy at the time. I mentioned in one of the previous ones, the DMT of 2018 experience. I've done it several times, but I've never blasted off, and you can watch that. But anyway, he's seeing the Millennium Falcon, and all I'm seeing is this green hue underneath a very blackened out part of the sky, and it was huge. I could tell it was huge. And I need glasses and contacts, mind you, my whole life. So, I didn't have anything on or in, so it was blurry to me. All I saw was that. But he claims the Millennium Falcon. For what it's worth, I'm not claiming that Star Wars is real, but that's what he claimed it looked like. So a Millennium Falcon with a green light underneath it was apparently what hovered above my house, and it was huge. He was dumbfounded. He was in awe. He just was looking. I was like, what do you see? And he's just looking. He don't even know what to say, because he's high on weed on top of that, bro. We're still young. He's fresh out of college, and he's just staring like, oh my God. I talked about the time that I went into a shamanistic war craze when I was living at the Forest Lake in Springfield. I live in Springfield, Ohio, and it's it's one of the higher drone capitals of the United States military for experimental drone craft. And I'm not even saying that's what this was, but I was basically outside. Just so happened to be, I lived in a camper at the time, so I'm walking out in the campgrounds, and I'm walking out into my car, and I look up, and out of nowhere, this basically Star Fox level, like basically drone, because I think it wasn't the size, it wasn't huge, but it looked like it was like a drone craft, but it was hovering right above me over the tree line, heading towards the Freemasons old folks retirement home area, because it was like a 10-minute walk to the retirement home, maybe 15, and it's like a minute drive if you're driving. And this thing is like doing real low hovering right over me. It's huge for a drone, but too small for a person that would be inside the vehicle. And it freaked the shit out of me. Now, the other time that I've seen something was, this explains, for context, I explained Ryan, my buddy, RNO, he was involved with my earlier Stomestein works. You can always see this shit. They said it was illegal, but it's in context. It probably violates terms of service for being aggressive. But it was intentionally parody, and I stated it multiple times on several accounts. I got gangstered by the government because of the Lysander Spooner, the deeper investigations I was going into at the time, and explaining that it was shock and awe just to be the initial release of my character. And I paid the price for that, for being an example, went to prison, etc. But, basically, my brother, he's, for my meme rap, he's a little Chad. Or Juice Dog, as he went before. And he was my apprentice for a while, because as he was getting older into becoming basically 15, he got interested in this phenomena research. And this goes into the whole Discord spirituality that I think I will get into. Maybe in this video, maybe the next part of this, my case journey. But basically, I'm teaching him, we're doing rituals, I'm teaching him what I basically tried to do with RNO, and he got possessed by it. I never learned my lesson, folks. I'm a Saiyan mind, I'm a dumbass, I'm young still, I'm 30 now. I may be unk, but I'm still 30, and that's still young, let's be honest. So, basically, I'm teaching this guy, my brother, the new path. What I've learned, and this was years and years later. So, I'm more learned, I'm more seasoned, I studied. And, basically, and he was with me one time, and we were calling out at the time of the context. We were experimenting and remote viewing the Archangel Michael, and I'm like, you want to come fuck with me, Archangel Michael? And the way I see it is like Jedi or space cops, very corrupt space boony cops. I don't think that we have a galactic federation or a greater imperium. I think that it's just whatever the hell is living out here is dark forest, and not only humans but reptilians and amphibious like and other races basically live here and engineer races to survive and strengthen their numbers and abilities to do the Dark Forest theory. Should anything arise, there's multiple types of races with genes to survive, and the human race, as we are right now, are tweaked and primed to refreshen the gene pools of multiple non-human intelligence in the region. We live literally to be legacy bearers of times where these other humans, who apparently do not breed as much as we do, and I can go into why that is, we breed like wild rabbits. I can study the lore of the Smith-Mund Act and the related Obama-era executive orders, and related maybe perhaps under Trump through the means of his militaristic executive orders, allowing fiction to basically be promoting hard-to-digest reality truths in the convenient way of fiction. Like Assassin's Creed, for example, even admits that it's basically its whole story is based off of historical and religious history. And people don't even bat an eye. There's so much into that game alone, it's surprising. Deus Ex Machina, the Deus Ex games are another one. But, basically, we're calling out Archangel Michael, the whatever head cop angels out there, the whatever head Malachim. And then out of nowhere, a craft appears, and basically, it's flying around. I'm like, come on then! I'm like a Saiyan, you gotta understand, that's where I really am. There's no other greater mental illness other than I just don't belong. I'm a crazy Saiyan, like in the sense that I like to just be aggressive Dante Broly, basically. Dante and Devil May Cry, basically Broly is my mindset. That's what I am. And they've given me medications over years basically to make me function like a human. I've gone on to explain that I think that I'm just what they would call in a future mindset in hindsight, a transitional fossil between and the ongoing hybridization program of the human race. I'm 6'5". My dad's not that tall. My head's larger than both of my dad and my mom's. I'm known for having a very large head. I was born with a patch of goat hair basically underneath my chin. My mother always, called it my Billy Goat's gruff when I was a kid. I've always been into these different things. You know, it goes into I started studying the conspiratorium and occult things like Baphomet in the 8th grade summer of basically going into the high school era. So, this was like 2010-ish, 2009. I was born 1995, November 13th. Around about that time, basically. And I go to basically, studying the conspiratorium because my Uncle James basically is like, there's this thing called the Illuminati, and I didn't believe it. I was like, a group of people controlling Get Real. But then the more I studied it, and I actually was studying factual things. He wasn't just feeding me information. But over time, I would just study things, and I'm like, holy shit, there's something to this. And of course, then it follows up with my 2014 awakening. Basically, since a young age, I was around like 4 years old. I began to exhibit Saiyan-like traits of aggression. It's funny, like my grandma tried to whip me because I was being a spoiled brat, and with a yardstick. I body slammed her, bro. I said, "You're not my dad," and I body slammed my grandma. I love my grandma to pieces, but she threatened my Saiyan pride. I swear, I'll try to get my grandma. She's still alive. She's the judge's age, and it's like 89 right now, Judge Rice. It's crazy. I hope she lives longer. She's a badass, bro. She basically fed Tom Thumb, the pre-WWE superstar, and there's a story behind that. Basically, and I've explained the Freemasonic connections, the Oddfellows to my family, the Knights Templar. I'm not, for the record, actually a member by any means. My father was formerly before he began to not pay his dues financially, and he had no longer been involved with the order. I don't see it as bad or good. It's a method. But anyway, basically, when I was like in kindergarten, for example, basically I'm at my mother's, and we go to visit a cousin's house, and basically my mom's mom, her husband, so this is a by marriage thing. His dad, we're over there, and his wife's there, and I'm like, "Hey, you're fat bitch, you're a dumb bitch, I'm basically being a piece of shit." Because I'm saying, and I'm being funny to the other kids. And basically, he's like, "I'll whoop you." And then I don't listen. I'm still doing like, "Yeah, you ain't gonna do shit." I'm 4 years old, mind you. He spanks me and sends me to go in. I'm crying. And then I get filled with rage and say, "You're not my mother and father." I said, "I kill you." They literally tried to hold me back, bro. You don't understand. I am literally like a Viltrumite. I'm some sort of hybrid, like, of these species, and I firmly believe it. I don't have proof, but I absolutely do believe, and I've had these experiences that are so unorthodox that I just believe that I'm a bloodline Nebo baby hybrid. I can't prove it, but this is what they were saying when they say the CIA is looking for people who, whistleblowers have said that, analysts over the years have said it, that they look for bloodlines and hybrid aliens that are among humans, and they say that they're among the humans. And I'd still believe my father and my mother are my parents, but I think that I was one of those taken in the womb at their ingestion, enhanced to be like some sort of aggressive Saiyan creature with all of the augmentations to my body to be like 6'5" as I am. And I'll show my driver's license, bro. You can see in some videos, I'm tall as fuck. I'm big as fuck. I lose weight, gain weight over the years. You can see pictures on various social medias and occult experiments. But, basically, I have goat hair underneath me. And if I have an x-ray, I can show proof of it. I'm not just being a con artist. So I'm not claiming any sort of special unique other than I think that more so that this is common. I am merely a hybrid with enhanced ability of the original, my mother and my father, who have bloodlines connected to these extraordinary circumstances and institutions of secret societies. And you gotta admit, I'm pretty intelligent with my Clifton Strength strategic thinking like mind, and I want to go into the fact that I was summoning some UFOs, working with my little brother at the time as a teenage apprentice to me in my work. I'm summoning the Archangel Michael, for example. And, this goes into Yahweh ben Yahweh, the guy who was claiming to summon UFOs, the prophet guy, he's a real dude. Other people, you can see videos. They're real good videos. The disclosure videos of the military, the Pentagon, are really tame compared to shit that's real. And it's like many people think they're hoaxes. And it's like, that's the problem with academia. They have tainted the waters and ridiculed people. And now they're the ones left insane. No doubt in my mind, so that these Albert Pike-styled Scottish Rite Freemasons that are extremists to make their Lucifer character come out and blow people away. But basically, it's there are so many circumstances. My unique path is, I've fallen into I saw the New Age Ashtar Ascension. I was getting channeled messages. I was in the original 2014 wave where Ashtar Command became prominent again. And basically, I originally believed, I might be a Pleiadian starseed. I resonate with this. Well, then the more I thought about it and the weird circumstances of characteristics of the Pleiadian shit, right? Basically, I learned that, this isn't real. This isn't realistic. They're basically getting people who feel like outcasted and have a UFO experience or believe in UFOs and conspiracy theories and feeling like they're not normal, and basically taking advantage of that and putting them into the New Age cult, where they basically have this Evangelion, instrumentality project, third impact style belief system, where they want the eschaton to be, we merge into a unity consciousness. I'm like, fuck no. I don't want to be Shinji. I don't want to be involved with third impact, bro. I don't want to get in the damn Ava. Fuck all that. You know what I'm saying? But I have these experiences, like my little brother, before he became my apprentice, I had him and my other little brother, young ape mode. We were basically, I had them over and them in the campgrounds with me to take, off my mom's hands, let them have a little fun with their older brother, playing video games, as I, it was just, being thoughtful of my younger siblings. I used to like that when my other brothers were around. I'm my father's only son, but, I digress. Basically... And I take them outside, they start seeing UFOs, and I start my summoning thing, and they start seeing shifting. They both told me this, and if I can get them to tell me, basically, them too. Everybody has, because of the related issues, basically aren't affiliating with me. And, they're talking about having dreams where they're getting abducted by aliens. So, I understand that people distance themselves from me because I'm really like a John Constantine-like figure. There's this whole wave of discord spirituality, and it shows the greater themes of the awakening, the greater awakening process that we're going through as we merge into the quantum edge age. And you can check out my video on our technological advancements. I basically think that the World War III posturing that we have right now is to create a small-scale nuclear conflict with minor-scale nuclear warfare exchanges, some territory moving that lasts a few months, maybe days, depending. And after a few exchanges and rhetoric and violence, the UFOs of the Elohim, and the other structures will come to the surface and say, basically, we're saving you from yourselves, humans. You failed the test. That basically has been told in the clay tablets of the Anunnaki, that upon their departure and they left it in the hands of humans and kings. Humans tend to be flock creatures that sheep. Very basic. Robert Morningsky speaks about. Robert Morningsky's talking about. Basically that there's two variations of the human batch. One that's a mindless slave for the gods that does menial tasks, doesn't have monologues, etc. And the other that is of the bloodline class, and it's a division between two brothers, mimicking basically the traditions of the Sumerians with Enki and Enlil, and they basically have the very same function. And that supports the notion that the kings, priests, and elite class of bloodline systems were its own form of caste that was given power before, the Anunnaki left again. And when they return, like the main cast, and I do think that they're returning, I will go into this in a very shortly in a video called a case for Planet X, going into unusual research in astronomy in the 70s, climate change, collision theory throughout history, Velikovsky, the Russian scientist, the anomalies with the moon, and everything else that basically might suggest that we have a trinary or binary system that we live in. It's not impossible, and we got to think outside the box here. I'll go into Dyson sphere theory and everything else, so be on the lookout for that. So if you have stayed till this long, I greatly appreciate you, and this is not the end of my case. And even if you don't have any proof to what I'm saying, my case is phenomenal. I think it's interesting to listen to. I'm going to be like breaking the fourth wall. It is unusual and it is anomalous, even within experiencer case phenomena. So I hope that you gain some worth out of this, and this is not the end. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode of the King Majora case.